They thought I'd forgotten. But dementia doesn't make you blind, it just makes others careless. I wasn't always the kind of woman who questioned her children's motives. For 47 years, I believed that love meant giving without keeping score. My husband Richard used to joke that I'd give away my last dollar if someone looked at me with sad eyes. He was right, and for most of my life, that generosity felt like a strength. Richard passed 2 years ago. Heart attack. Quick and painless, the doctors said, as if that made it easier. It didn't. We'd built everything together. The lakefront property in northern Michigan. The 4 rental cottages that provided steady income. The life we'd imagined spending in our golden years. When he died, I inherited not just his estate, but his dreams. And his worries. My 3 children reacted to their father's death in different ways. Michael, my oldest, cried at the funeral, but was back at work within a week. Dad would want me to stay focused, he told me. Jennifer flew in from Seattle, stayed 3 days, and left with a box of her father's watches. For memories, she said. David, my youngest, moved into the guest house for 2 months, rent-free, saying he needed time to process his grief. He processed it mostly on my couch, watching television. I didn't mind. They were grieving. I told myself, that's what mothers do, we absorb everyone else's pain and keep functioning. Last spring, I started forgetting things. Small things at first. Where I'd put my reading glasses. What day the cleaning lady came. The name of the woman who ran the bookstore in town. I'd known her for 15 years, but her name just vanished from my mind one Tuesday afternoon. I laughed it off. I was 69. Everyone forgets things. But then I missed a rent payment from one of my tenants. Not just forgot to deposit it, forgot it existed. The tenant, a kind young couple with a baby, called worried they'd somehow sent it to the wrong address. That's when I knew something was wrong. The neurologist was gentle. Early-stage cognitive decline, she said, avoiding the word that hung in the air between us. It's not Alzheimer's, not yet, but we need to monitor it. And Teresa, you should consider getting your affairs in order. Power of attorney, estate planning. These conversations are easier to have now. I sat in my car in that medical building parking lot for 20 minutes, watching people come and go. Young mothers with strollers. Elderly men shuffling with canes. Everyone looked so certain of their next step. I didn't know what mine was. I called Michael first. He was in a meeting. I left a message asking him to call back when he had time. 3 days later, he texted, "Everything okay?" I texted back, "Need to talk. Important." He called during his lunch break, eating something crunchy while I tried to explain about the diagnosis. "So, what, you've got Alzheimer's?" he asked. "Not exactly. It's early cognitive decline. They're monitoring it. But you might get Alzheimer's?" "It's possible." Silence. Then, "Mom, have you thought about what happens to the property? I mean, if you can't manage it?" That should have been my first clue. Jennifer called me that evening. Michael had told her. "Mom, oh my God, why didn't you tell us sooner? This is serious. We need to have a family meeting. Like, immediately." "It's not urgent, honey. The doctor said it's early stage. I'm managing fine." "You're managing fine now. But what about in 6 months, a year?" "Mom, the properties, the rentals, your finances, someone needs to help you. We need to make a plan." I felt a warmth in my chest. My daughter was worried about me. She wanted to help. "Let me call David," she continued. "We'll all come up next weekend. We'll figure this out together." That Saturday, all 3 of my children sat around my dining room table. The same table where we'd celebrated birthdays, holidays, graduations. The same table where Richard and I had signed our first mortgage papers. It felt different now. They were different. Michael had brought a folder. Actual printed documents. Jennifer had her laptop open. David, surprisingly, was taking notes on his phone. "Mom," Michael started. His sales manager voice in full effect. "We've been talking, and we think the best thing is for you to let us help manage things. You know, take some of the burden off your shoulders." What kind of help? I asked. Jennifer jumped in. Financial management, mostly. The rental properties are complicated. Maintenance, tenant relations, taxes. It's a lot for anyone, let alone someone dealing with memory issues. Memory issues. That's what we were calling it. I've been managing them for 2 years, since Dad died, I said. And you've done great, Mom. Really great. Michael's tone was the one you'd use with a child. But you just told us you're having cognitive problems. What if you forget to pay property taxes? What if there's a maintenance emergency, and you don't remember? We just want to protect you. Protect Dad's legacy. David, who'd been quiet, finally spoke. Plus, Mom, be honest, you could use the break. When's the last time you went on vacation? Did anything for yourself? Let us handle the business side. You deserve to relax. It sounded so reasonable. So loving. What exactly are you proposing? I asked. Michael slid papers across the table. Power of attorney. It would let us make financial decisions on your behalf. We'd handle the properties, manage the rental income, take care of bills. You wouldn't have to worry about anything. I looked at the documents. Dense legal language. My name at the bottom. With a line for my signature. I need to think about it, I said. Jennifer reached across and squeezed my hand. Of course, Mom. Take your time. But please, think seriously about it. We're worried about you. They left that evening with hugs and promises to call during the week. I stood at my front window and watched their taillights disappear down the long driveway. Something felt wrong. I couldn't articulate what. Maybe it was Mother's intuition. Maybe it was the way they'd avoided looking at each other when they thought I wasn't paying attention. Maybe it was how quickly they'd produced those legal documents. I thought about calling Richard's old business partner, Frank Morrison. He'd helped us build the rental business from nothing. He'd been at Richard's funeral, had checked on me regularly in those first terrible months. If you ever need anything, Teresa, anything at all, Richard was my best friend. Taking care of you is taking care of his memory. I called him the next morning. Frank, I need advice. And I need you to be completely honest with me. We met at the coffee shop in town. I explained about the diagnosis, about my children's sudden interest in my finances, about the power of attorney documents. Frank was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Teresa, those properties are worth about $2.4 million. The rental income is roughly $12,000 a month. That's income your kids know about. And desperate people do desperate things. I'm not saying your children are desperate. But I knew Richard. He worried about this exact scenario. He used to tell me, Frank, I love my kids, but I've enabled them their whole lives. If something happens to me, and then to Teresa, they'll fight over everything we built. Richard never told me that. He didn't want to worry you. But Teresa, before you sign anything, let me suggest something. A test. What kind of test? Frank pulled out his own notebook. Tell them you'll think about the power of attorney, but first, you want each of them to help you with something specific. Something small. See how they handle responsibility before you give them control of everything. It was brilliant. And it was something Richard would have done. I called each of my children separately over the next few days. To Michael. Honey, before we talk about power of attorney, I'd like your help with something. Could you manage my personal checking account for the next month? Just make sure bills are paid, keep track of expenses. It would help me see how we'd work together. He agreed immediately. Of course, Mom. I'll set up online access and everything. Don't worry about a thing. To Jennifer. Sweetheart, I've been thinking about the rental properties. Before any big decisions, could you research senior living facilities for me? Just in case. I want to know my options. Quality places, costs, what's available. Absolutely, Mom. I'll put together a whole presentation for you, the best facilities, everything. To David. Son, I need help with maintenance on the cottages. There's a list of small repairs. Could you handle them this month? It would really help me out. Sure, Mom. Whatever you need. Frank and I set up monitoring. He helped me maintain access to everything while appearing to hand over control. For Michael, we created a separate checking account with $5,000, enough to cover a month's bills with plenty left over. For Jennifer, I gave her my requirements. I wanted somewhere close to family, with full medical support, but not too institutional. For David, I provided a detailed list of repairs with a budget of $3,000 and the contact information for my regular contractors who gave me bulk discounts. The test period was 4 weeks. Week 1 passed quietly. Michael sent me a text. "Got access to the account, Mom. Everything's under control." Jennifer emailed, "Starting my research. This is going to be great." David showed up at the house, looked at the repair list, and said he'd get started. Week 2, Frank started noticing things. "Teresa, Michael made a $500 withdrawal. Cash. From the ATM. It's flagged as household expenses. But there's no receipt, no documentation. Maybe he needed cash for something?" I said, not wanting to believe it. "Maybe. Let's keep watching." By week 3, the pattern was clear. Michael had withdrawn $900 in cash, all labeled vaguely as expenses. But when I checked my actual bills, they were paid from my original account. He'd never switched them over. The checking account I'd given him access to, he was using it like his personal ATM. Jennifer's research turned out to be a list of 3 facilities, all of them budget level, the kind with shared rooms and minimal care. When Frank looked into them, he found one had multiple violations, another had been cited for neglect. The third was in Arizona. Close to family, Jennifer had written, her family, in Seattle. Not close to me at all. David never called a single contractor. Instead, he'd gone to Home Depot, bought materials at full retail price, somehow spending $4,200 on what should have cost $3,000, and then the repairs sat half-finished. The receipts Frank found showed David had bought a new television and a PlayStation Num, buried in amongst the lumber and paint. My children were stealing from me, not aggressively, not obviously, but steadily, confidently, assuming I wouldn't notice or wouldn't remember. The betrayal felt physical, like something breaking inside my chest. "What do I do?" I asked Frank. "First, we document everything. Then, we have a conversation. And Teresa, before that conversation, you need to protect yourself legally." I met with my estate attorney, Barbara Chen, that week. She'd helped Richard and me set up our original wills decades ago. "Teresa, I'm going to be blunt. If you give your children power of attorney with your current cognitive diagnosis, and they're already showing signs of financial exploitation, you could lose everything. I've seen it happen. Good people, loving families, and then money becomes involved. What are my options? We create an irrevocable trust, transfer the properties into it, set up a professional management company to handle operations. You maintain an income stream, but the principal is protected. Upon your death, the trust can distribute to your children or to whoever you designate, but they can't touch it while you're alive. They can't manipulate you into changing it. And critically, it protects you if your cognitive decline worsens. Can I still leave them something?" Barbara looked at me with kind, tired eyes. "Teresa, you can structure it however you want. You can leave them everything, leave them nothing, or leave them something conditional on their behavior. But right now, today, we need to protect you from becoming a victim in your own family." It took 2 weeks to set up the trust and transfer everything. Frank agreed to be co-trustee with Barbara's firm. My income would stay the same. My life would stay the same. But my assets were now untouchable. Then I called the family meeting. They came eagerly. Michael brought a bottle of wine. Jennifer had printed out her facility recommendations in a nice binder. David showed up with photos of the half-finished repairs on his phone. We sat at the same dining room table. I'd made coffee and put out cookies, like this was a normal family gathering. "Thank you all for coming," I started. "I wanted to talk about the last month. Mom, before you start, I just want to say how glad I am we're doing this," Jennifer said. "The facilities I found are really promising. Jennifer, let me finish. My voice was steady, calm. Michael, you were supposed to manage my checking account. Can you tell me how much money is left in it? He blinked. I'd have to check the exact amount. $4,100. There should be $4,200. You withdrew $900 in cash, labeled as household expenses. But my bills were never switched over to that account. Where did the money go? His face went red. Mom, I can explain. Jennifer, you were supposed to research quality senior living facilities close to family. You sent me 3 options. One has been cited for neglect. One is in Arizona, 3 states away. The most expensive one costs less per month than what I currently spend on groceries. Did you actually want to find me good care, or did you want to find the cheapest place possible so there would be more inheritance left? Jennifer's mouth opened. No sound came out. David, you were given $3,000 and a contractor list. You spent $4,200, didn't call a single contractor, and the repairs are half finished. Oh. And somehow a PlayStation Num ended up on the receipt. Want to explain that? David at least had the grace to look ashamed. Mom, I was going to pay you back. From what? You haven't had a job in 2 years. The table was silent. Do you know what the hardest part of this is? I said, my voice starting to shake. It's not the money. It's that you heard, I might have dementia. And your first thought wasn't, how do we help Mom? It was, how do we control her money? You came to me with legal documents before you came to me with compassion. You tested me to see how much you could take before I noticed. Mom. That's not fair, Michael started. No, Michael. What's not fair is that I raised you to be better than this. Your father worked his entire life to build something for this family. For you. And the moment you thought I might be vulnerable, you started dismantling it. I pulled out my own folder. Barbara had prepared everything. 2 weeks ago, I placed all of the properties, all of the assets, into an irrevocable trust. Professional management. I maintain my income, but none of you can touch the principal. Ever. Not while I'm alive, not when I die. Jennifer's face went white. You can't do that. I already did. But what about our inheritance? Michael demanded. Dad wanted us to have. Dad wanted you to earn it. He wanted you to be responsible adults. He told Frank Morrison years ago that he was worried about exactly this. Turns out he was right. David was crying. Actual tears. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I needed the money, and I thought, you thought I wouldn't notice. You thought I was already too far gone to realize what you were doing. No, Yes, David, that's exactly what you thought. All 3 of you did. The silence that followed was crushing. My daughter stared at her binder of cheap nursing homes. My oldest son stared at his hands. My youngest son cried quietly. I need you all to leave now, I said. Mom, please, can we just talk about this? Jennifer tried. We just did. The trust is irrevocable. The decisions are made, and I need time to think about whether I even want you in my life right now. They left. No hugs this time. No promises to call. I sat at my dining room table and cried for an hour. Frank found me there when he came to check on me. Did you do it? He asked. I nodded. How do you feel? Like I failed as a mother. Frank sat down across from me. He was 74, had known me for 3 decades. Teresa, you didn't fail. Richard and I used to talk about this. He loved those kids, but he knew he'd spoiled them. We both did it. We gave our kids everything, thought it would make them grateful. Instead, it made them entitled. That's not your failure. That's a whole generation's mistake. What do I do now? You live your life. You take care of yourself. And maybe, one of them realizes what they almost lost and becomes the person you raised them to be. That was 8 months ago. Michael sent an apology letter after 2 weeks. It was clearly written with the help of a therapist or a lawyer. Very formal. Very careful. I didn't respond. Jennifer tried calling multiple times. I didn't answer. She finally sent an email. Mom, I was wrong. I was focused on the money and not on you. I'm sorry. Can we talk? I wrote back, I need more time. David showed up at my door 3 months later. He'd gotten a job. A real job. Working construction. I want to finish the repairs, he said. No charge. I want to fix what I broke. I let him, not because I trusted him, but because I wanted to see if he'd follow through. He did. Every weekend, for 2 months, he called contractors, learned from them, finished everything properly. The last day, he sat on my porch, dirty from work, and said, I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know I'm trying. Last week, I invited them all to dinner. Here. At the table. We didn't talk about the money. We didn't talk about the trust. We talked about their father. About memories. About the time Michael fell off the dock, and Richard jumped in fully clothed to save him. About Jennifer's high school graduation, when Richard cried harder than she did. About David's first business idea that Richard funded, even knowing it would fail, because he wanted his son to learn. At the end of the night, as they were leaving, Jennifer hugged me. Really hugged me. Not the polite embrace she'd given me for years. I'm sorry, Mom. Not sorry I got caught. Sorry for who I became. Michael was next. I'm working with a financial advisor now. Learning to manage money properly. I want you to be proud of me again. David just held my hand. Thank you for giving me another chance. I don't know if we're fixed. I don't know if they've truly changed or if they're just being careful. But I know I'm not the same woman I was a year ago. My diagnosis hasn't progressed. The doctor says the stress might have exacerbated early symptoms. Now that my life is calmer, more organized, I'm actually doing better. I still forget things sometimes, but I remember what matters. The trust remains. The boundaries remain. I have lunch with David once a week now. Jennifer calls on Sundays. Michael sends articles about property management and asks for my opinion. It's not the relationship I imagined having with my adult children. But it's honest. And it's teaching all of us something Richard tried to tell me years ago. Love isn't the same thing as enabling. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone face the consequences of their choices. The properties are doing well. Frank and the management company have increased the rental income. One of my tenants, that young couple with the baby, they brought me flowers last week. For being the kind of landlord who cares, they said. I'm thinking about doing something Richard and I always talked about, using some of the trust income to fund scholarships for kids who want to go into business. Not a handout. A hand up. They'd have to maintain grades, show responsibility, prove they understood the value of what they were being given. Maybe that's what I should have taught my own children. Not that I'd always be there to catch them, but that they needed to be strong enough to catch themselves. Last night, I found an old letter from Richard. It was tucked into one of his books, dated 2 weeks before he died. He must have written it during one of his insomniac nights, planning to give it to me someday. My darling Teresa, it started. If you're reading this, I'm gone. And I need you to know something. You have the biggest heart of anyone I've ever known. But sometimes, love means saying no. Sometimes, love means letting people struggle. I know you'll want to help the kids forever. But promise me, you'll help them learn to help themselves. That's the real inheritance we can give them. Not money. Not property. The ability to stand on their own. I love you, always, Richard. I cried reading that. But they were different tears than the ones I'd cried 8 months ago. These were grateful tears. Because even though Richard was gone, he was still teaching me. Still guiding me. Still reminding me that the hardest part of love is knowing when to hold on and when to let go. My children are learning to stand on their own now. It's painful, it's messy. But it's necessary. And me? I'm learning that forgetting where I put my glasses doesn't mean I've forgotten who I am. I'm Teresa. Richard's widow. Mother of 3 complicated adults. Owner of properties that represent decades of hard work. And most importantly, I'm someone who finally understands that protecting yourself isn't the same as giving up on love. It's just a different kind of love, the kind that says, I believe you can be better, and I'm going to give you the space to prove it. That's the story I needed to tell. Not because it has a perfect ending, but because it has an honest one. And honestly, that's enough.